Hi, this is Lisa Futch for Paper Maniacs, and this is our lesson for the month of June, and we're going to talk about coloring bodies. We're also going to be reviewing coloring faces. We talked about coloring faces last time using different color combinations. One of the great color combinations is E50, E51, and E00. They make a really nice light skin tone, and we had the 50-51 color combination last month. The one thing that you need to look at when you're first approaching your image is where is that light source coming from? And we talked about before in one of our past lessons, is it coming from overhead, side, or underneath? And when I look at this image gives me a clue of where the light source is coming from. Because her head is tilted right to the front, to me the light source is coming straight down. But you can do it on either side. It's really up to your preference. I just think this lends itself better to a top light source. And we're going to take our template and look at this image based upon a top or overhead light source. Every place that the lines enter the image is going to be the lightest portion. Every place they exit is going to be the darkest portion. There are some exceptions to this rule, and we're going to look at those. So it's nice to have this template to kind of give you an idea and to refer back to where your light source is hitting. Okay? Like at the top, if you can see, my lines are hitting right at the top of her arm. They're leaving here, the bottom of her hand, top of her head here, leaving here. The dress entering here, leaving here. Okay, so let's look at our skin tone combination of the E50, E51, and E00. And once again, I start with my dark color, and let's look at her face. The exception to this rule is by her hair is going to shade the face. So you're going to have a little bit of darkening here because of that. And I'm working with Dressing Up Willow from With a Joy Stamps, which is a new stamp company that Patty started carrying in her Paper Maniac store, and I have to say they're one of my favorites. I love the stamps. I think that they're incredibly fun to color. They're great people stamps, and they do give you some directionality when you're coloring, which I like. All right, here's my E51. I go back in with my E50 and blend this in. And it's okay at this point if I go ahead and color over her lips. You know what's interesting with these markers? When I had markers as a kid, I could not color one color over another, or it was a big mess. With Copic markers, you can color one marker over another. A lot of times I'll even do it to tone down a color. I'm going to go back in and add a little bit more dark where the hairline is. And then I'll go back in and do a little blending into that so I can reserve that white area of her face. Now we have her face done. I'm going to go ahead and use the R20, which we got last month for the cheeks. And I'm going to use that on the E50 just to touch a little cheek here. Blend that in. And this is the tip-to-tip blending method. Now, it's going to look a little harsh at first, and that's okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to clean the tip of my marker off, and now I can go back in, and I can go back in and tone that down with my E50 color. Now, if she was running, or if it was like a summertime one, or like little kids always seem to have the most flushed cheeks, you can make the cheek color darker. You could even use a darker color such as an R22. Sometimes people will use like an RV14 also. I'm going to go back this one more time. I tend to blending to me is more of a process. It's not something that, okay, I'm done blending and I'm moving on. I will come back numerous times to go ahead and blend in my image if I don't like what I'm seeing, or if there's not enough highlight and low light on there. Like, I'm still not incredibly satisfied with the amount of shadowing here, so I'm going to add my E51. around the top here just to give a little bit more contrast. You can't have light without dark. So you can't notice that there's a light in the face if you don't have some dark in the face. Those cheeks turned out actually really pretty cute. I'm going to go ahead and do my R20 now and go over her little lips. The nice thing about these markers is with this brush tip is very tiny, so you can get into different places. You know, I decided that that is not enough of a contrast for me. I'm going to pull up my R27 from the kit this month and just do a little tip to tip and add a little bit more color to her lips. So now what I'm doing is I blended those two colors together to get a little bit of a darker color. My R20 and my R27 to get a little bit darker color on her lips. Okay, now let's look at her body. Body is skin tone too, but it does pose a few more challenges than just your typical face. Bodies get shaded by different things. They can be shaded by different objects in the picture. They can be shaded by the bracelet, by the cap of the sleeve, the hem of the skirt, by the shoes. So there's a lot of different things you have to take into consideration. If we were just looking at an overhead light source, it would be very simple. This is light, this is the darkest. However, because we are looking at all these different pieces to this image, we have to look at those and take those into account when we're doing our shading. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to help you decide where these colors go. I'm going to start with my E51. E51 and E00 are kind of close together. E00 has a little bit more of a pink tone to it, and the E51 has a little bit more of a warmer brown tone to it. Now, she's going to have a little bit of shadowing here underneath her sleeve. Okay. She's also going to have some shadowing underneath her bracelet, and a little tiny bit right there around her bracelet. Now I'm going to look at, we looked at that overhead light source. She's going to have a little bit down here on her hands because this is where those lines were leaving the image. Let me show you. Okay, entering, leaving. But we did need to put a little dark here in order to take into account the shading. And I'm going to go a little farther because her sleeve goes all the way around here. But it doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be a huge amount of shadowing, because that is supposed to be the lightest part. I'm going to go in with the E00 and blend in. And to be able to notice that this is shadowed down here, I'm going to leave a little space for my lightest color. Also, I'm going to add a little bit more darker color here towards the inside of her arm, because her arm is shape is more rounded, and so that's going to show me that there's going to be, as the light is leaving this image or this shape, it's going to be a little darker towards this edge. Now I'm going to blend in my E50. Now once again, this is a really small area to blend in. You can blend in a modified feather stroke if the area allows for it. I think that adds for a smoother color blending, or if you get to the point where it's just too small, you can go ahead and go back to that circular. Once again, I reserve this white portion. This is going to be the lightest part of my arm. I'm going to blend everything else first, and then I'll go back and very lightly go over this area. Now, there is no way you're going to get these colors in perfect every time. You're going to have some bleeding. You're going to go out of the lines a little bit. That's why you have the colorless blender, and I will tell you, do not worry about it. I do it constantly. The colorless blender is my friend. In fact, I have 3 of them because I have a tendency to misplace them. I'm going to go back in with a little bit more dark. You can always do that, especially when you start with dark and you can see where the shadowing is. Add a little bit more shadowing here on her shoulder and down her arm here a little bit. And go up here just a touch. And I want to add a little bit more E00 in. That was my E51 to blend this in a little bit nicer. Okay. Now I'm going in with my E50 to blend that all back in again. Once again, I'm kind of missing that back area that's going to be the back of her arm. That's going to be the lightest. I can go over that, but every time I go over